So dear students, as we have already completed with the chapter 1, now we will be heading towards the chapter 2, that is forms of business organization. In this chapter, we will be discussing on the identifying different forms of business organizations, explaining the features, merits means advantages and limitations of select form of business organization, and also distinguish between various forms of organizations and analyze factors determining choice of an appropriate form of business organization. Okay, so in this chapter we will be discussing on various types of business organization one can start with. So look at the book now, see it. If one is planning to start a business or is interested in expanding an existing one, that means the जुन चाहिँ business उसको already छ, if he wants to expand that business, an important decision relates to the choice of the form of organization. So he or she must take a proper decisions. If he wants to extend the business, he needs to have a proper planning, and also a good decision is required. Okay, and he can also, supposing उसको एउटा सानो business छ अरे, ऊ एक्लैले त्यो business चलाउँदैछ अरे, supposing, that means he is the owner, he is the sole proprietor. Sole proprietor means a single person running a business. A single person can run a small business very smoothly. If that person wants to expand his existing business, then he needs to think further about it. So how can he run the business smoothly? So he can, if he want to expand his business, he can always switch to partnership or join Hindu family business or joint stock company or cooperative societies and many more. So it's up to him, and for that he needs to take a very good decision. So the most appropriate form is determined by weighing the advantages and disadvantages of types of organization against one's own requirement. So he needs to see, so weighing means तौलिनु पर्यो नि कुन चाहिँमा फाइदा छ, because doing a business is to look for a more profit. So for that the person has to weigh. Weighing means to तौलिनु, उनीहरू कुन चाहिँ कस्तो बिजनेसमा गएछ भने कहाँनिर फाइदा रहेछ, because they have to look for the advantage. So कहाँनिर appropriate हुने रहेछ, के गरेछ disadvantage हुने रहेछ. So he needs to take and choose the type of organization against one's own requirement. So there are various forms of business organizations from which one can choose the right one, which includes sole proprietor, joint Hindu family business, partnership, cooperative societies and joint stock company. Okay, now let us start our discussion with sole proprietor. So the simplest form of business organization, and the move on to the analyzing more complex forms of organization. So now we are starting with the first point of business organization, on various forms of business organization. So we are starting with the sole proprietorship. So let us discuss what does a sole proprietor means. So in the book a very simple example is given. Now just take a look at it. Do you often go in the evening to buy a register, pen, chart paper, etc. from a small neighborhood stationery store? That means it's written here. Obviously we being the students, we being the teachers, anyone, whether a small boy or girl, they all, everyone, they visit a nearby neighborhood stationery shop to buy the above required stations. So well, in all probability in the course of your transaction you have interacted with a sole proprietor. अब यस्तो सानो सानो दोकानहरुको के हुन्छ, मेनली owner एउटा मात्रै हुन्छ, only single owner you see. So directly or indirectly it's just that हामीले realize गर्दैन. We have come across such interaction with the sole proprietor. So सानो सानो दोकानको एउटै ओनर हुन्छ, मालिक हुन्छ, मालिकले दोकान चलाउँछ, मालिकले नै सर्भिस दिन्छ. So that comes under sole proprietor because he is the owner and he himself runs the business. He does not require any employee because all the work is done by himself. Just like profit जति earn हुन्छ, the profit is earned as a reward by himself, and loss भयो भने ऊ एक्लैले loss suffer गर्छ. He alone himself suffers the loss and he himself enjoys the profit as well. So sole proprietor is a popular form of business organization because you have come across many sole proprietor in and around the areas. So and it is one of the most suitable form for small businesses. सानो businesses को लागि, for the small businesses, sole proprietor is the best decision, especially in the initial years of operation. Means when you want to start up a business, sole proprietor is the best, because while starting a business, if you start with a partnership, you may have to face a lot of problems, many risks. So it's better to start with a sole proprietor. It's better to start alone. So sole proprietorship refers to a form of business organization which is owned, managed and controlled by an individual who is the recipient of all the profit and bearers of all the risk. That means he enjoys all the profit and also bears the risk, losses by himself. So that means sole proprietorship means an individual himself who runs the business. So this is the evidence from the term itself. The word sole implies only. Sole means एक्लै मान्छे, the only person, and proprietor refers to the owner. So he is the only owner. He himself is the owner. So a sole proprietor is the one who is the only owner of the business. So this form of business is particularly common in area of personalized services such as beauty parlors. Owner आफैले काम गर्छ, कति like सानसानो beauty parlors, and the owner himself, owner herself works, hair salons, small scale activities like running a retail shop in the locality or in and around the surrounding areas. जस्तो कि पान दोकान, stationery दोकान, all those are run by the sole proprietor. Is written here also. Sole trader is a type of business unit where a person is solely responsible for providing the capital. So he is responsible for everything, for bearing the risk of the enterprise and for management of the business. To manage the business, to face the risk, to take all the decisions, to take the entire responsibility is done by himself, done by the individual himself. So the individual proprietorship is the form of business organization at the head of which stands an individual as one who is responsible. That means sole proprietor himself has to take the entire responsible, who directs his operations and who alone runs the risk of failures. So when he faces the risk, when he has to face the losses, it's all faced by himself. So there are some features of sole proprietor. Salient characteristics of the sole proprietorship form of organizations are as follows. So under the features, the first one is formation and closure. Formation and closure means forming of business and closing of the business. Second is liability. Third one is sole risk bearer and profit recipient. Fourth one is control. Fifth one, no separate entity. Sixth, lack of business continuity. Okay, sixth is the last point, I guess. So the sixth point is lack of business continuity. So now let us go in details. What does the formation and closure means? So hardly any, so to form a business you hardly require any legal formalities. Means legal means following the laws, rules and regulations given by the law. So you hardly require any legal formalities to start a sole proprietary business. That means you don't need any legal formalities to start up a sole proprietor business. Though in some cases one may require a license. Obviously अब जुनै दोकान खोल्नुको लागि we require a license. There are some shops which require a license, like रासन दोकानहरू, रम दोकान खोलेको छ भने you require a license. But there are some shops who does not require a legal formalities to start a sole proprietor business. So there is no separate law that governs sole proprietorship. Law is equal to every people. Law treats everyone equally. So business को लागि separate law कहिले हुँदैन. Govern कहिले गर्दैन. Rules, regulations, formalities that we have to follow is equal to every business. So closure of the business can also be done easily. Kina sole proprietor, he himself is the owner, so he can start the business anytime he wants, and he can also close the business anytime he wishes. He doesn't need to take any decisions. He did not take any suggestion from someone else. For example, partnership हो भने म र एकजना छ अरे, हामी दुईजना छ अरे बिजनेसमा. इफ टू अफ अस आर रनिङ अ बिजनेस and मैले if I don't want to continue with the business, I cannot just close the business, I cannot just end the business. I have to take the decisions of my partner as well. So both the partners has to agree if they want to close a business. So we cannot do anything on our own. We have to take suggestion from a partner. So that is one disadvantage in the partnership. And whereas in the sole proprietor, one can start the business anytime he want, and he can also close the business as he wishes, because it is done very easily. उसले कसैलाई हेल्प माग्नु पर्दैन, कसैको सजेसन माग्नु पर्दैन. So this is the ease in the formation as well as closure of business. In a sole proprietor, it's easy to form a business as well as it's easy to end the business as well. Likewise, मैले एउटा बिजनेस स्टार्ट गरे, if I don't want to start this business, म यो बिजनेस क्लोज गरेर अर्को बिजनेस स्टार्ट गर्छु. Such decisions can be taken by the sole proprietor. And the second one is the liability. So liability को लागि later on I'll be giving you a brief discussion, brief explanation on what does liability means. Okay, so liability, sole proprietor have unlimited liability. So this implies that the owner is personally responsible for because sole proprietor have unlimited liability, because this implies that the owner is personally, because he is an individual, because he is personally responsible for paying off debt in case of assets of the business are not sufficient to meet all the debts, because this implies that the owner is personally responsible. That means he has to take the entire responsible of payment of debt. Like if उसले लोन लिएको छ अरे, so लोन लिएको छ भने सबै बाँकी के हुन्छ उसकोमा हुन्छ. So that is why the owner himself has to take the entire responsibility for paying the debt, paying the क्रेडिट अब बाँकी कति लेख्छ बाँकी तिर्नु पनि पर्यो नि त सो इन केस अफ एसेट्स अफ द बिजनेस इफ इट इज नट sufficient to meet all the debt. So as such, the owner's personal possessions such as his or her personal car and other assets could be sold for repaying the debt. यो चाहिँ किन हुन्छ भने why this such things happens in the sole proprietor is that in sole proprietor if he has taken the loan from the bank so त्यो ब्याङ्कको पैसा सबै उसले बेयर गर्नुपर्छ द ओनर हिमसेल्फ हेज टु टेक द एन्टायर रेस्पोन्सिबिलिटी टु पे अल द credit pay all the debts that he has taken the assets of the business if supposing if he's not being able to return back the money if the money is not sufficient to pay back the money then the bank ले चाहिँ उनीहरुको like the उनीहरुको आफ्नो पर्सनल गाडी अदर लाइक उनीहरुको जग्गा जमिनको प्रपर्टिजहरु पनि लानु सक्छ so they will take away all the assets could be sold for repaying the debt उले पैसा तिर्नु सकेन भने उसको प्रपर्टी उसको गाडी के छ सबै बैंकले लान्छ clear so about this liability you will be studying in details in the accounts class okay so accounts ma liability चाहिँ पुरा word use हुन्छ so ma'am will give you the brief explanation on what does liability means so that is why sole proprietor have unlimited liability किनभने उले सबै बेयर गर्नुपर्छ like for example if supposing partnership मा हो भने partnership मा supposing उनीहरुले बैंकबाट लोन लिएको छ if they have taken the loan from the bank and the bank बाट लोन लिएको छ नि if the amount is not sufficient to return back the money means दुई जना पार्टनरले पैसा आधी आधी तिरेछ भने सजिलो पर्छ उनीहरुलाई because sole proprietor ले उ एक्लै ओनर भएर चाहिँ उले डल्लै पैसा दिनुपर्छ बेयर गर्नुपर्छ the entire responsibility बेयर गर्नुपर्छ whereas partnership मा चाहिँ एडभान्टेज के छ भने they don't have to bear the entire they don't have to bear the entire debt at least उनीहरुले त्यो debt चाहिँ के गर्नु सक्छ 50-50 divide गरेर पैसा आधी आधी दिनु सक्छ so that is the advantages of the partnership okay and the third one is sole risk bearer and profit recipient sole risk bearer means he alone himself have to bear all the risk and whereas and if he earns the if he earns more profit then that is a reward for himself and he enjoys the entire profit whereas in partnership profit के हुनुपर्छ शेयर गर्नु पर्यो नि त पार्टनर्स को बीचमा आधी आधी whereas sole proprietor मा उले जति profit earn गर्छ उ आफैले लान्छ उले शेयर गर्नु पर्दैन so this is one advantage of sole proprietor but sole proprietor ले चाहिँ रिस्क पनि आफै बेयर गर्नुपर्छ जति लस भएको छ आफैले बेयर गर्नु पर्यो whereas in partnership उनीहरुले रिस्क शेयर गर्दा हुन्छ रिस्क उनीहरुको जति पनि हुन्छ they can bear the risk together 50-50 बेयर गर्छ okay the risk of failure of business is borne all alone by the sole proprietor that means he has to take the entire responsibility if he faces any loss however if the business is successful the proprietor enjoys all the benefits that means he enjoys the entire profit as a reward so he receives all the business profit which becomes a direct reward for his risk bearing so he should be able to face all the challenges more the risk sole proprietor thinks that if there are more risk then there is more chances of earning the profit and so he receives all the profit which becomes a direct reward for all his risk bearing fourth one is control the right to run the business and make all decisions lies absolutely with the sole proprietor so if any decisions are to be taken the individual himself have to take the decision, whereas in partnership they can at least discuss with each other, suggestion माग्दा हुन्छ, whereas sole proprietor मा suggestion पनि माग्ने छैन, decision दिने पनि छैन, he alone himself have to take entire decision, so he can carry out his plans without any interference from others. Sole proprietor are independent, he can take the decisions, he can make any plans, he can make any suggestion without any interference from others, so he does the entire work independently. The fifth one is no separate entity, means in the eyes of the law no distinction is made between the sole trader and his business. Like I told you, in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the laws, all business field are equal. So in the eyes of the law there is no differences in any type of business, whether it's a partnership, whether it's a joint stock, whether it's a Hindu joint family, or whether it's a sole proprietorship. So in the eyes of the law he treats everyone equally. So as business does not have any identity separate from the owner, so the owner is therefore held responsible for all types of business activities. Okay, so it's written very clearly, in the eyes of the law no distinctions are made between the sole traders and his business, as business does not have an identity separate from the owner, so the owner is therefore held to take all the responsible for all types of activities of the business. He should not go against the law, he has to follow the rules and regulations given by the law. अब ल सपोजिङ उनीहरूले के नराम्रो काम गर्यो, के भएछ भने बिचारा लमा त लको अगाडि, अब सपोजिङ इफ यु हेभ टु गो टु द ल, इफ यु हेभ टु गो टु द कोर्ट, इफ यु हेभ टु फाइल अ केस, उनीहरूले बिचारा यसको बिजनेस सानो छ, यसको बिजनेस सानो छ, यो माइलाग्दो छ, के त्यस्तो कहिले सोच्दैन, वेदर इट्स अ स्मल बिजनेस or whether it's a big business, he treats in his eyes all the businesses are equal to him, there is no differentiation, there is no distinction in the business. And the sixth point, that is the last point, that is lack of business continuity. Lack of business continuity means since the owner and business are only the same entity, since there is a lack of business continuity because यसमा partnership हुँदैन, so यहाँनिर के individual person himself is the owner of the business. So supposing death भयो, insanity भयो, अब बिमार भयो, डेथ भयो, फिजिकली इल हेल्थ भयो, इम्प्रिजनमेन्ट भयो, जेल गयो, if supposing bankruptcy भयो of the sole proprietor will have to direct and detrimental effect on the business and may even cause closure of the business. Okay, I hope you all understood. If not, then let me repeat it again. Since the sole proprietor is the owner himself, the individual himself who runs the business, supposing ऊ बिमार भयो, डेथ भयो, जेलमा गयो, अब फिजिकली इल हेल्थ भयो, ब्याङ्क्रप्सी भयो, पैसा छैन, and it is because he himself being the owner, so there is more chances of closing of the business. त्यसमा चाहिँ कन्टिन्युटी हुनु छैन, अनि त्यसमा इफ सपोजिङ ओनर आफै बिमार भयो, के भन्छ भने इफ देयर इज नोबडी टु टेक इन चार्ज अफ द business, so there is more chances of closure of the business, so that is why continuity हुँदैन. Whereas if supposing partnership मा हो भने business, even if partners मा if 5 जना पार्टनर छ अरे, 5 जना पार्टनरमा एकजना पार्टनर खसेछ भने अर्को 4 जनाले business handle गरेर continue गर्छ. So that is how the business runs in the partnership. So there are many advantages and disadvantages in the business organization. So that is why while taking decisions, while making any kind of decision, one has to see all the various advantages and disadvantages for the requirement of the business. Okay, so now this much for today, and in the next class we will be discussing on the merits, that is the advantages of the sole proprietor. And thank you class. If it's still difficult for you to understand, then you can always call me or ask me. Okay.